Okay, so first of all, my name is Ted Manousakis. I was lucky enough to be born on this property, about 50 yards, 60 yards from here. And I've lived here for my first 11 years of my life and then moved to the States. My mother having made the decision to bring her children to America. And for the 10 years in America, I had no relationship or contact with the Greek environment, the Greek community, the Greek church. But I was totally assimilated into to the American system, the American society, and so on. And 10 years later, I came to Greece and realized that I had forgotten everything of my country, of my place of birth, etc. And I decided at that moment that I should do something to repatriate myself. And I started coming back to Greece, and it wasn't until 1985 that I realized the only way to truly repatriate myself here would be to start a business. And that's when I went to the hospitality business and then into the wine business. The wine business was kind of accidental, but it was something that I loved very much. It was in 1985 or 86 that the village gave me as a gift a piece of land up in the mountains, and I decided to plant a small vineyard. Then I started reading about wine, and the more I read, the more I realized I didn't know much about wine. And subsequently, I started purchasing some more property around the mountains in the village. And the seed was planted inside of me that I wanted a vineyard and a winery. Because I didn't know much about the business, particularly the grape growing, where the wine really starts, in my opinion, I found a group of professionals, highly professional individuals in the United States, and another group in France, and we simply got together and talked about wine. Why the United States and France? The United States because of the organized methodology of winemaking in the US, and why France? Because of the traditional method of winemaking in that country. So every year or every two, we get together. Still, the team is intact, and we get together and we talk about the wine, and we sit around on the beautiful island of Crete, which everyone wants to visit, of course, and we sit and talk about wine. So that is basically the way we see winemaking on the island of Crete. When we first started the project in 1993, 1992, I had Lucy Morton and our team, a world-renowned individual in viticulture, particularly matching wild rootstock with the noble varieties. And Lucy had done analysis for me, soil analysis, climatic analysis, and other assessments. And she simply said, why don't we plant the Rhone varietals here? We hadn't considered at that time the local varietals because I was more focused on the French varietals. So we decided we're going to start by planting Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre, and the white grain Roussanne. So we did. And 4 years later, when we did our first harvest in 1997, we realized that the climate and all the conditions and local environment, the terroir, if you want, of Crete, is truly, truly adaptive to those grapes. And We were very happy about that. As a matter of fact, just to give you an example, the Roussan grape is a wonderful white varietal, and perhaps, in my opinion, is the most noble of all white varietals. But it had a problem in the Southern Rhone that it wasn't yielding enough. You would get one or two or three, maybe clusters per vine. It was not economical for the French, so they were uprooting the Roussan and planting other varietals. Well, I fell in love with the grape as I was reading about it, and I said, even if it doesn't yield a lot, we're going to plant a couple thousand vines, and just for the house. So we planted a couple thousand vines, and during the first harvest 3 years later, we had a problem: too many clusters. So really nobody had ever asked the grape, where do you feel more comfortable? This grape feels particularly comfortable on the island of Crete, and particularly comfortable on the foothills of the White Mountains. So that's pretty much how the winery started. We decided the first year, the first 97, 98, 99, and 2000, the 4 years in the beginning, all the wine was exported to America, to the US. And then we introduced our wine to Greece in 2001. 2 years later, in 2003, our 2002 blend was picked as the top wine in Greece, which was incredible for us, being as new of a winery as we were, to have such a significant recognition by the Greek wine environment. So that's what we did in 2002. Subsequent to that, we had many recognitions. 3 years ago, I believe, or maybe 4, we entered the Grenache du Monde exhibition and contest in Spain, where there were approximately 5,500 varieties of Grenache grape presented, and we won the gold prize for our Grenache, which was really unheard of for a Greek wine to win such a high award. And we continue, and I really believe that Crete, Greece in general, but Crete that I'm more particularly involved with, has the potential of showing wines that could stand up to France, to Italy, and the best wine producers in the world. We're working on that. We've made leaps and bounds in the last 20 years. And it's really a situation where I think it's in the beginning, in the very beginning. I think there's so much potential to Greek wine, and particularly Greek varieties in the world market. Since we started after we started our 4 French varieties, we focused on the local grapes. For example, we have a Muscat wine that is produced from 110 to 120-year-old vines. The clone is Spina, one of 13 clones in Greece, from the village of Spina, not far from here. We buy our grapes from that village, organically produced, and it is an authentic clone from very old vines. That's a Muscat. Our Vidiano, which is a very interesting grape variety, is an ancient grape which was produced in ancient times, but disappeared from Greece, from Crete, many generations ago. Until about 16 years ago, when a fellow found some vines in the hills of Rethymno, which is the next state over, and we started planting Vidiano. Today, it may be the third or fourth most prolific white variety in Greece. And that's a Vidiano. It's indigenous to Chania and Rethymno, to the western part of Crete, as a matter of fact. We have grown Vidiano. We also grow Assyrtiko, which is indigenous to the island of Santorini, of course, but it is different. We make a dry wine, but the local environment, the terroir, is different. In Santorini, it's very minerally because you have a lot of volcanic soils. In Crete, you don't have so much volcanic soils, so it produces a different wine. It's not a wine. It's not as minerally as Santorini, but it's a very, very wholesome, satisfying, great, I believe, and different Assyrtiko than typically of Santorini. And last, but certainly the most future of our wines, I believe, is a local indigenous variety from Chania called Romeiko. Now the Romeiko is a red grape. The characteristic of the grape itself, the cluster, is that 1/3 is green, 1/3 is rosé, and the last third is red, but the entire grape is ripe. The negative characteristic of the grape is that it oxidizes very quickly. So we experimented for 4 years to see if we can develop a fine wine, a very solid, good wine from the Romeiko grape. And so we released our Romeiko this year, as a matter of fact. And in the exhibition of Inorama, which is the annual exhibition of wines in Greece every year, our Romeiko was picked as one of the 25 top wines of the exhibition out of about 10,500 labels. So we were really very, very proud of that. I think there's so much future for us in that grape because it is produced prolifically around the Chania state. So that is a real solid direction that we're headed with the Romeiko grape. I don't know what else I can tell you, but maybe I can close as follows. We have followed a philosophy of our wines, and our brand name, of course, is Nostos. Nostos in ancient Greek it means the yearning to return, the root word for nostalgia, the root word for the word nostimo, which means delicious, good tasting in Greek. And the word was first used by Homer when he described Odysseus after the 10-year war from Troy, returning back to his home island of Ithaca. Homer says that Odysseus had the nostos to return to his home island. And we picked out that name because I was born on this property in a house about 50 yards from here. And so was my father. And my grandfather built the house around 1870. And I left this when I was 11 years old. But I always emotionally had the yearning to return. In terms of intellectually and methodically, I have become an American. I became entrenched into the American business of the American system of business, culture, mentality, etc., etc. But emotionally, I remained on the island of Crete in these places here among the olive trees and the orange groves and the home which is located in the midst. So we picked the name of Nostos because there was an immigrant myself, leaving the island of Crete and returning and having the yearning to return to the island. So our labels are characterized as such. As I said, our brand is, we chose to be Nostos, which really means the nostalgia, the yearning to return to one's homeland. Accordingly, my daughter Alexandra has come up with the idea of telling the story of an immigrant leaving from here, going to America and coming back. First of all, let me explain to you that our brand also has these three flowers. And these three flowers are very abundant here in this part of the island. And they are grown up on the hills and cut by women and decorate churches around Easter time. It's a very beautiful thing that they do. And the name of these flowers are Manousakis, just like our name. So I chose these because our name, of course, is Manousakis. And there are three of them, if you notice, after my three daughters. So everything that we do is really, it has a meaning, and it's very important to us as a family to have a meaning behind our product. So we start our journey, if you want. We call Nostos the journey. And we start with the first wine, which is a photograph of my father just before he left Greece for America in 1912 at the age of about 25 to 30. And that's a picture of him in his Cretan special uniform, special costume, if you want. And we go on to this little boy with the bicycle, which is a photograph of myself in my younger days. I must have been 9, 10 years old in the square of the village with a bicycle. And we continue on to the ship that brought me to America, the Olympia, in 1955. And then, of course, the next picture, which is a blend, signifies the building of this building, of the original winery in 1997, and our starting of the operation. And further, the Muscat depicts again the three flowers of the Manousakis after my daughters. And then the Vidiano depicts the vineyards that we finally established up in the mountains. And then we have a winemaker that is a dear friend of ours and a very, very special person in our lives, Kosti Galani, who has been with us all the time that we have been in business. And we honored Kosti with our Assyrtiko label with his photograph. And finally, we have the Nostos Big R, which is the Romeco, which is really the culmination of our project because we are using the indigenous grape of Chañar, and we call it Romeco, but if you notice in detail, it depicts all the previous labels in one label. That's a kind of a culmination of our project. And the last label over here, of course, is a design by my daughter Alexandra, who is an artist in her own right, and she has designed the Nostos pink label for us. So that's kind of tells you the story of the name, the philosophy, and how we decided to show it. The Mourvedre wine is one of the original varieties that we've grown up in the mountains. And it's normally used as a blending grape for color and for tannins. But we thought that we would make it, because of the climate here, we would make it as a single varietal. This is perhaps our crowning achievement in terms of wine. Not that we spend any less time or effort in this other. but the grape seems to have found its ultimate comfort here, and it produces very, very good wine. So to that end, we also made the packaging very special. Each bottle is numbered. We have wax that we hand dip, and we stamp it, of course, with our logo. So the people can understand the idea that we feel this is a very, very special wine. And that's about it.
Fantastic.